All right. Meeting is live. I seem to be the. I'm not the only one in here anymore.
Sorry, I was running a bit late.
Well, so was I. I just started it.
Oh,
I was like, the meeting is live, and I seem to be the only one. Oh, I'm not the only one. So that is how near it was.
nice.
Also, still eating.
Oh, I've done that many times. Eat dinner.
Meanwhile, Karen's still not here at all. So
Oh, she'll be here in a few minutes.
I'm just saying, like,
She's
we
the
weren't,
last to arrive.
although it's my Zoom account, so I mean that the meeting starts through, so neither of you could be here without me, technically.
That is true. We have to wait for you to get on.
So, what you working on tonight?
This thing that I can't put down, which is my Christmas dress. Hi, Karen.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello.
I can't seem to put it down, so I'm gonna be working on it.
Cool. After I finish eating, I'm going to be working on my boots more.
The charcoal looking ones?
Yeah.
They're not going to look like charcoal when I'm done with them, but I'm tempted to leave some charcoal effects because I like it.
Like just a little. Um,
I did the black base so that I can dry brush over it and leave a little bit showing through, so it might have a little bit of that effect. I don't know. Depends on how lightly I dry brush, I suppose.
all right, so just so you guys know how intricate this thing is, it's really soft, by the way. This piece here is the chest piece, and I got to do 30 rows for this piece alone, and I'm on row like 9.
Looks like you have a long way to go.
And this is just the chest piece. Then there's the borders, the straps, and the waist down. Like there's a lot.
All you're
And
doing
you
from now
got like 5 weeks to make it.
5 weeks. I got this. I got this.
Oh, right.
So I think it's Amy that puts me to sleep because when I was reading the second chapter in Amy's perspective, I was falling asleep again. Oh.
Ugh.
Well, let's not skip chapters.
Yeah, let's not. So started with chapter 38, which we were with Meg.
But
Dealing
So
with
you
some
it's on Meg.
And we haven't talked to Meg in a while. Like it was nice.
not since we haven't heard about Meg since she had the babies.
Yeah, Demi and Daisy. I forget what Demi is short for.
Did they say at one point?
They did, I think, during when they named him. But I can't remember.
Yeah.
See if I can find it.
Chili, chili.
But I really liked chapter 38 with Meg, and
Yeah.
it was a good chapter.
Dealing with some what I would consider normal adjustment problems.
Oh,
They had been fairly newlywed when they had kids, you know.
it's Demi is because his they wanted to name him after John, but they didn't want to call him John. So Lori suggested name him Demi-John instead.
Oh, because he's little. Yeah.
So okay.
Which I like Demi, but and calling him Demi, sure. But naming him Demi-John, like
That's
he's
cute.
not gonna stay a child forever.
Hey, we still call Baby O, and he's 13 now, 14, just turned
13.
14.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
My father's a junior. His father died in a car accident 6 days before my father was born. And still, they always called him Kenny Max to differentiate that they were talking about him and not his father, Ken.
See, it's so weird because my husband's also a junior, and all they did was call him Bubba or Polly instead of Paul. And, and so when we got married, I had to like remind him, you got to put Junior on all your paper. Everything has to have Junior on it.
One benefit of having this on my phone instead of my laptop is that it's a lot easier to take you guys with me if I'm trying to find something. The drawback is that I haven't finished reorganizing my workshop.
Oh no.
So I'm going to be moving everything not Pixie Elegance related upstairs. I have a kind of ridiculously big bedroom. So I'm gonna like use half of it for putting some of my craft stuff into.
It's
So
finished.
So all of my yarn's going to be going upstairs, so I won't have my yarn background anymore. But I don't use yarn for Pixie Elegance. But because of that, I
We
have
use
like,
that for personal stuff.
yeah,
Oh, can I just say our coworker had on a beautiful Hexagranny square sweater that she just finished making.
yes, she did.
Can I just say it was really, really cute?
Yes, it was.
I wish I
Also,
could
I told her
take a
that
picture next time.
she should join us for bookcraft sometime.
Oh,
I'm
that'd be cool.
trying to get her to come do a guest night.
Oh, maybe if she likes it, she could join us for our next book.
That'd be cool.
I'd like having her here.
You know, I could ask a coworker of mine to be a part of book club too. She crochets quite a bit.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
It's the one who got me my job.
Meanwhile, I'm just making like all the noise trying to get into this cupboard.
Honestly, we don't hear much noise.
Oh, good. Because it's really, really loud from this end.
I just gotta put hooks on 2 more of these, and these earrings shall finally be done. How long have I been working on these things?
Oh, at least a month.
Jeez.
Don't forget to take pictures and post it on your Facebook page because you've been promising people to do that.
I did promise on my live last night that I would do that. Yes, I did promise.
And I should be working on my earrings because they need to get done. But Christmas dress is just so much more interesting.
All that effort and the box I was reaching for doesn't have the piece of Conti in it that I thought it did.
Ah, no.
I'm just trying to find something other than what I was using because it's not showing up well enough on this. And by the time I have multiple things sketched out all over it, I'm not going to be able to differentiate them with what I was sketching on it with.
Okay.
It blends into the background too well. So I'm going to experiment with a few different things, try to find what will. what will draw in such a way that I can actually see it. I've got some oil pastels here, and I know I'd be able to see those, but that doesn't just brush off. A white one.
Yay!
No, it's not marking it.
Oh no.
Like, almost not at all.
That's not good.
It's too hard. It would need to be softer. It's like a charcoal pastel combo thing. I don't know exactly what it's called. It came in a set.
All right.
All right. Haha, I'm done. Put these back in the bag to take pictures of later.
What I am impressed with is the size of this skein, by the way. I still have this much left, and I've put this much into it. This might actually do this whole piece. I'm actually excited about that.
Nice.
Because I'm a big person and I require a lot of material.
All right, so let's get on to talking about the book.
Okay.
'Cause we
Yeah.
decided
Back
stuff.
to Meg. Back to
Right.
Meg.
Back to Meg. So she is adjusting to being a mom and doting on her little twins.
Yep. And I could identify with some elements of it. Now, you two are twins, but neither of you have had twins. And while you have played a part in helping to raise your niece, you have not had children of your own.
Especially at that young of an age.
Right. And I had already gotten very good advice about the importance of making sure to maintain my marriage even after having children, before I was even married, from several different trusted sources in my life. So I mean, it's not easy, but I never felt like I had to take care of the boys on my own. I mean, it was just one to start with, and then the other one. But I
never
never
felt that she had to, but more that like it was her duty to, like.
Right. Well, that kind of had to. That's what I mean. Had to as in it was her duty to, not had to as in he wasn't helping and therefore she had to, but had to like it was her duty to. And like she was somehow failing if she didn't. I never felt like that. So to that end, it was never, I didn't experience that, but I did experience, I mean, it's just hard to get that alone time, anytime when you've got children. It's hard to.
You also gotta think this was like 100 years ago, when it was more expected for the women to raise the baby and the men to go to work.
On the other hand, though, they do have at least one servant. I don't have that. But they also, don't have electricity. So
Yeah, they can't microwave a dinner in a few minutes.
yeah. Um, but yeah, there were some things that rang very true for me. Like leave my children for pleasure? Never. Not like for the entire first year of their lives, but the first month or two, like,
Well, I think it's also because they were together very long before she got pregnant. They weren't married very long before she got pregnant, and
my
then
husband and I weren't either.
so they also didn't like have an already like close knit bond. Like I think when me and Paul have kids, we've been married for 10 years. You know,
Yeah, that definitely makes a big difference. And that's another thing. I mean, I witnessed that with some friends who had been married um 3 or 4 years, I think, at the point that we got married, and then were having their first child at the same time that we were having ours. And um, we were married for a little over a month when I was pregnant.
Oh yeah, there's Garth.
whoops,
There's
whoops.
Garth. Spawned up there. Oh man.
Stop. I hit my mouse and my YouTube video in the background started playing.
Oh
Sorry.
wow. I was wondering what was that.
I was like, what's yelling at me?
Sorry.
I'm like, I don't recognize that voice. Like, who is that?
I'm sorry.
So I did, I mean, they had their struggles and we had our struggles. But there was definitely a different dynamic to those struggles in what they already knew of each other and had a routine of. And on the one hand, like, they had that closer bond. On the other hand, we didn't already have like a settled routine of what our life was like without children that that would get disrupted. So they each come with their own struggles, but there is definitely something to be said for having time that to have that bond in your marriage, that or in your relationship, that you haven't had children.
Mhm.
And I know people that having children too early breaks them apart. I know people that having children earlier is what drew them closer together. It really varies a lot, couple to couple. And I think that with John and Meg, after they had been struggling for a while with it, which my only thing with that was like, I was surprised Marmee hadn't spoken up sooner. Like, that feels like something that you should have maybe like, hey.
To see if her daughter could figure it out herself without help, because she's all about letting people fix things on their own.
And
You know,
in fairness, at that time, it was a lot less likely that they would end up divorced than it would be today.
I gotta be honest, like, speaking of then and today, when they said that he would find,
Hurt somewhere else.
yeah, I was
someone
thinking,
else that
no,
probably would-
Mr. Brooks wouldn't cheat, would he? Like, that's where my mind went.
exactly what I
like,
thought. And I was like, this was written for children.
and then it's like he just hangs out at his friend's house. I'm like, okay, I understand.
And enjoys his friend's wife's cooking.
I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, that's fine. Like, I'm good.
exactly what I
Meanwhile,
thought too.
my husband brings all his friends to my house. So my house is the house everybody goes to.
You're the Scots, Karen.
I'm the Scots.
Um,
But it was nice to have that good mother to mother, but also mother daughter interaction that we had that chapter.
yep.
Yeah, we haven't had much mother lessons from Marmee in a while.
I've always kind of wondered why they call her Marmee. I think it's cute, but I never really understood it. And it didn't occur to me. I don't even know if I really clocked it last time I read this, but last time I read this, I was like 19 or 20. And I don't know if I would have thought this through as much. And my family, my mom does, but my dad doesn't, and my siblings and I, like, we don't tend toward as much of a distinct Maine accent. We grew up around it, but we don't tend toward as much of it. And it wasn't until I was reading Demi saying, I don't remember if he said Parpa or Parpy,
Par par.
Parpar,
Mhm.
and then that I was like, oh, because randomly placed R's in New England, they probably pronounced it that, because there are some recordings of New England accent from like the late 1800s, and it was very similar to how it is now, but like slightly different. And the way that the R's were emphasized in certain places was slightly different. And the I think that the kids are like getting the R's kind of randomly in there, because they're growing up around people who misplace R's, and that because they pronounced mommy as marmy when they were little, they just kind of kept that as a cute thing as they grew older.
Yeah.
Is my
I,
theory. I don't know that for sure, but
we
I've
have,
never clocked that.
we have an aunt. I call her Annie Shell, but her name is Michelle with an E, not an I. So it's pronounced Michelle, not Michelle. Michelle. But that was too difficult for little children to say. So we always called her Annie Shell. To this day, still call her Annie Shell.
We also have an Aunt Fifi that we call Fifi because
Good luck pronouncing
Fabian is a little hard for a kid to say. Also, that her parents planned for her to have that nickname.
Caroline is hard for a lot of kids to say too. So most of my nibblings call me Annie K.
Oh,
But
this
I
is
am
so.
equally happy to go by Caroline or Kay. Just most adults that I know, I'll say, I'll go by Caroline or Kay, and then they'll start out calling me Kay, and then they just revert to Caroline.
I remember you said that. Now that you mention that, I remember you said that when we first met, that you go by Caroline or Kay.
Yep.
It's like, oh.
When I make my my videos, like not live streams like this, but just regular videos for Pixie Elegance, I usually start them with "Hey, it's Kay," because
That's cool. I like that.
because Caroline is too long, and also, I mean, not too long for being my own name, but for like in videos and things, it's
For like a cute opening, it's not very.
but also it's in English speaking countries, it's typically spelled with a C. In a lot of more Germanic or Russian, I think it is, speaking countries, like, or um, languages derivative of those languages, which technically English is Germanic, but it's also Norman, and it's also Saxon, and it's also Latin and whatever else. But in those countries, it's more likely to be spelled with a K. But in my case, it's only spelled with a K because everybody in my family is spelled with a K or an M. But people just assume that it's spelled with a C. So if I'm introducing myself to masses of people, it's just easier to say, hey, it's K, and nobody's going to wonder how that's spelled. I mean, they might just write the letter K, they might spell out K-A-Y, and either way, it's fine. Anyway, none of that is either here nor there with the intended topic, though.
We're easily sidetracked tonight.
Yeah. Your
Yeah,
optimism.
I kind of liked it because it did show the chapter. I liked it because that is something that some, new couples struggle with kids is finding that balance between taking care of the kids and keeping their relationship. And the mother, out of maternity, like out of maternal instinct, wants to always be there for their child and don't always let the father help. But like, I like how they showed that as soon as Mr. Brooks was there with his son, like everything was okay. Like he handled it fine.
If he always had known, he wouldn't have gone too far. Like
I also like I just lost that train of thought entirely.
Oh geez.
Mhm.
It'll come back. But no, I just thought that
but
was
I
really
like-
cute how like she was by putting that into the chapter, it showed her and us that, not that we didn't already know that Brooks is that kind of sweet, kind-hearted character. Like
but he knows how to be firm.
exactly.
I think it's consistent of Meg that she consistent in her character since the beginning, since when she was a teenager, that she thinks that she knows best, and thinks that she's doing what's best for everybody. She's not trying to do something maliciously. She's trying to do what's best for everybody, but she's not talking to other people or discussing it with them because she just assumes that she knows what's best. And that she feels like she can't talk to him about it because it would somehow make things worse. And then and she's already been through that with the situation with the cooking and everything when they had first gotten married. But things don't always last. Rarely does anybody learn a lesson just once and learn it forever. And
in history oft repeat itself.
yes,
It has to be pretty memorable if it's a one and done.
and even if it is, I mean, I guarantee she remembers that lesson, but applying it to different circumstances when she's had a lifetime ingrained in her of assuming and essentially training herself that because she's the oldest, she knows better than her sisters, and that sort of morphing into just assuming that she knows best for everybody. And the the kind of repetition of her kind of needing an additional lesson or a different circumstance of a lesson of like, no, you don't know what's going on in his mind any more than he knows what's going on in your mind. And trying to just wait for him to figure it out when you're not figuring out what's going on in his mind either isn't going to solve anything. But even then, she doesn't fully seem to ever grasp that, like, yes, you can talk to your husband. You should talk to your husband. But
Communication is key.
yeah,
Mhm.
but at
Well,
least
well,
she
example of
she's
that, her mother told her to let him help with Demi because Demi needs to learn. And then she's like not letting him help. And then Demi comes down while they're trying to have tea. And he's like, yes, he needs to learn. Let me take care of him. And again, she's like, no. Like, he's like, no, he needs to learn. Like, I like how it was reiterated throughout that portion. Like,
and like, even though she had this whole conversation and she was trying to do it, she was still struggling to let go of it,
yeah.
which is so
You remember she's
relatable.
like doting on these
So
children for it.
realistic.
Right. It's so relatable. I mean, not even necessarily just with motherhood, but with anything that you feel like this is how it needs to be, and I can consciously, logically understand what you're explaining to me, but actually letting go of it and letting you do the thing is so hard.
Yeah.
Also, I just love the way that Demi talks. Like, she does such a good job of having him talk like a little boy, and not like a, wow, that is one precocious 2-year-old, but also not like, I can't understand a single bit of this. Like, just talks like a little boy.
So I have some loose stitches here. I think I might need to go through and kind of cover some of them up.
Yeah.
There's
Please-
holes.
TikTok I sent you about holes with double crochets.
Yes, I did see that. That was cute. It's a more complex stitch, though, that's for sure. She showed me a video how to make double crochets less gappy.
I share a lot of crochet TikToks with her.
I'm like looking back through how Demi talks now. Yes. And then he says is instead of yes.
Yes.
Is. The first time I read it, well, I was listening to it. I was listening to the audiobook. But when she read is, I thought that he was saying kiss until she continued, and then I was like, oh yes, he was saying yes. But like, it totally makes sense. It's one of those things that like you have to like parse out what the 2-year-old's saying, and like, oh, this is how this 2-year-old talks. Okay. Obi doy, me tummin.
It's morning.
Morning now.
Yeah, no.
Me,
No.
me
I can
love
see a
par
kid
par.
trying to pull that too. Like, I can see a kid trying to pull that.
I have a kid who 1,000,000,000% would have done that.
Like I went to sleep. It's got to be morning now, right? Right?
Me
Right?
loves par par. And then like 30 seconds later, me doesn't love par par.
I'm like, oh, I hate you.
And the look of betrayal when his mother just hands them to him. Like, no. Like, I can see it. I'm like, that's when the kid realizes, oh, they're in trouble.
But it's really good because like once she's able to, I mean, the way that it explains it at the end and saying that um that she learns to be to rule her kingdom not as a queen but as a wise wife and mother, and that gives the implication that this has sunk in and she's going to continue with it. And so, the Demi is too young to remember this when he's older. And so it's a really good moment of them really becoming like a solidly united front,
A cohesive unit.
and being able to run the household as a partnership instead of, and that's in a lot of ways very, very progressive for the time period that this was written in, and for all the little lessons that she had to put in her, what will be accepted kind of way. She put in some that were really considered very progressive for the time period, and that was one of them. Anything else to say on that before we move to the next chapter?
My favorite part of that whole chapter was him falling asleep with his son holding his finger.
So sweet.
Oh.
And it was such a beautiful picture of like, I am going to sternly insist that you do what you are supposed to do, but it doesn't mean I don't love you.
Yeah, it was super cute. Yeah. So the next chapter, honestly, like I loved reading the chapter with Meg and Mr. Brooks, but Karen, I also feel like Amy's very dry for me.
She's so
but-
worried.
But it
She's
was
so
a very
worried.
important chapter, I feel, for Lori.
I do get that too, because Lori's been kind of like down and out ever since Joe kind of like
Dumped him,
dumped her.
rejected him.
See, I'm just sitting here like, since Joe followed her heart and did not just accept a guy in pity or because it was expected of her, which would have ultimately made both of them miserable. And you're like in utter disgust, like ever since Joe.
But
I was being Lori's point of view. Like,
he's very upset by this.
So Karen's tone of voice.
oh, he was just like so dejected. That's because Karen's rooting for these two. Like,
I know, it's because it was her ship.
It's my ship.
And I cannot remember a time when I didn't know the
Outcome.
trajectory of this story. Let me put it that way. And at this stage, that is where everything sits. I will not tell you where everything goes, but at this stage, that is where everything sits.
I feel like in a way she was telling him not to give up on either A, love, or B, Joe. Like, and just keep going after Joe because she's stubborn.
oh, you mean Amy? Okay.
Yeah. Amy was telling Laura that in this chapter.
Yeah, I feel like she was kind of telling him, like, no, you really didn't show her that you cared about her by finishing school. Everybody kind of expected that out of you. Like,
more
that
from
was just you
Granny
being a
Father
good
than-
person. That wasn't for her. Like,
I mean, yeah, that's, yeah. And I don't think he ever realized that these things that Joe would lecture him about, living up to the like bare minimum of his actual potential and the privilege that he's afforded, I don't think it has ever occurred to him that Joe and everybody else would not see that as being for Joe, that he chose to do that.
Right. Like Amy said, you finished college because you were smart enough to, and it would be a waste of your grandfather's money to fail it.
That was expected of you, and because you should.
Like, it wasn't for Joe, it was for all these other reasons.
I just get the distinct sense that his perspective of generosity is, or of selflessness, I should say. His perspective of selflessness is showering people with gifts. And he has no concept of actually giving up of himself. Showering people with gifts for him is no generosity because he has tons of money. And the idea of like actually giving of himself just doesn't even occur to him. And it's not because he's like bad in any way. It's
And
just,
he doesn't know better.
yeah. And I mean, he should, but also like you can see why he wouldn't. Like growing up in that big empty house with his grandfather, and until he had the March women in his life, he didn't really have much of any sort of example to that end. And then kind of immediately was with the wrong crowd in college.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the people he hung out with in college did not help him.
Yeah. And yeah, he just never learned that discernment. And Mrs. March was something of a surrogate mom to him, but she could only do so much, especially when he was already 2/3 grown. And there's so much that he just didn't understand. That's my read on it anyway.
Another part I liked, that because they are trying to show that he's like, they keep showing his facade slipping in this chapter. Every time Joe's mentioned, every time something reminds him of Joe. And my favorite depiction of that was when he was looking at the roses that Amy gave him. I can't remember if she gave them to him or if he was just looking at them while she was there. But like, he was talking about how the roses that Joe would pick for him, the flowers would be vibrant and colorful.
She gave them to him.
Okay. And then the ones that Amy gives him are more light colored, more probably faded pastelish, more subdued. White.
And more like what would be traditional for his Italian background.
Right.
But less like the wild thing that the bright and vibrant thing that Joe is.
Right. I liked how they depicted that. That was really like you could feel the pang of hurt for Lori. Like,
Yeah. There was a lot that was really good like that. She did a really good job describing stuff like that.
it was really well written, yeah.
Apparently, whomever has decided that they need to knock at my door is not going to stop until I go tell them.
Oh, okay.
I will be there.
What about you, Care? What was something you liked about I feel like this whole chapter with Amy and Lori was more to help Lori move on and process things with Joe, as well as bring us back to Amy and her arts and her passions.
Yeah, and especially when he was talking to her, she pulled out an old drawing.
Yeah.
Oh crap.
And I like how she wrote it as like you could tell like Amy's perspective that it was an older drawing because Amy didn't appreciate it as much as her current drawing, even though her current drawing was quickly sketched. It makes it sound like it's a crappy child drawing, which it isn't, obviously. But
No, that wasn't just
Talked about
Amy.
having redone it, and it showed a different side of Lori than the current Lori. And how she preferred the older one to the newer one, not because of how well it was drawn, but because of the way that Lori was portrayed in the
right,
photo.
but the way that it's written, it makes Amy feel like it was something a child would draw, even though we all know that Amy is a talented artist.
Well, I didn't take it that way. I took it only as that her skills have improved significantly since she's been in Europe.
She's
Which
had
was
a lot more time to draw.
and he did comment when he looked at it, that your talents have improved greatly. And he didn't say it, I don't think, I didn't take it as being said in any sort of like insulting way, but just like,
Yeah, I
like,
didn't get the
like
impression
that's
that
good and now you're even better.
Well, maybe I'm just projecting my imposter syndrome then.
it's interesting that you felt that way.
Let me find it.
I think it's interesting that you felt that way because I didn't feel that way. And
hold on, it's right here.
the fact
Yes.
that she kept a picture from years ago, you know? Just a random sketch of him taming a horse while Joe clapped and laughed and Beth and Meg worried. And
Here it is. He looked up then and he smiled as he could not help doing, for it was capitally done, the one that she had just done. The long, lazy figure on the grass with listless face, half-shut eyes, and one hand holding a cigar from which the little wreath of smoke that encircled the dreamer's head. How well you draw, he said, with a genuine surprise and pleasure at her skill, adding with a half laugh, yes, that's me. As you are. This is as you were, said Amy, and laid another sketch beside the one he held. It was not nearly so well done, but there was a life and spirit in it which atoned for many faults, and it recalled the past so vividly that a sudden change swept over the young man's face as he looked. Only a rough sketch of Lori taming a horse. Hat and coat were off, and every line of the active figure, resolute face, and commanding attitude was full of energy and meaning. The handsome brute, just subdued, stood arching his neck under the tightly drawn rein, with one foot impatiently pawing the ground, and ears pricking up as if listening for the voice that had mastered him. In the ruffled mane, the rider's breezy hair and erect attitude, there was a suggestion of suddenly arrested motion, of strength, courage, and youthful buoyancy that contrasted sharply with the supine grace of the Dolce far niente sketch.
that's referring to what you're going to call it, the sketch earlier.
Yeah. Laurie said nothing, but as his eye went from one to the other, Amy saw him flush up and fold his lips together, as if he read and accepted the little lesson she had given him. That satisfied her, and without waiting for him to speak, she said in her sprightly way, "Don't you remember the day you played Rary with Puck and we all looked on? Meg and Beth were frightened, but Joe clapped and pranced, and I sat on the fence and drew you. I found that sketch in my portfolio the other day, touched it up, and kept it to show you. Much obliged. You've improved immensely since then, and I congratulate you." So yeah, I don't get from that any
That it was like
any
a child's drawing, but that her drawing had improved from what the level that was already considered good.
Well, I wasn't saying that it wasn't a good picture, but from the part where it said, like at the beginning of that part you quoted there, with the it wasn't as well done, I kind of felt like that was coming from Amy's perspective when that was said, and I kind of felt like she was like, well, it's not as great as the other one. That's kind of how I read it.
I don't know. I tend to read that. I could see that.
I definitely probably read it wrong, and you guys are right. But I kind of read like a little bit of like,
not necessarily. I'm just considering whether
I pictured it as Laurie's point of view as he looked at the picture, not Amy kind of like describing the picture for us, but rather Laurie's look upon the picture.
either way, you guys are considering it as being a third person limited narrator, being like third person, but the third person talking from the perspective of how a specific character sees things, which is, among other things, how Jane Austen wrote Emma. Everything's colored by how Emma sees things, even though it's technically written in the third person. I read it as a third person universal narrator. The narrator already knows all the things. And I just read it as the narrator commenting as fact.
isn't that interesting how we all read the same paragraph different? I like that.
And I have no idea what she intended when she wrote it. And I don't know if it matters.
I like to think it's up to the readers.
Okay with that. I'm having a really hard time trying to decide what to put on the inside of the boot because, like, it's the inner part that doesn't get seen as much, but it needs to have stuff. But, like, I don't want to put anything super cool there. I have
A dilemma.
I don't know if you can see any of the lines there at all.
I can see some green ones.
Yeah, I
They're
can kind of see lines.
Yeah.
They're
I can't
blue.
tell what they are, but
Okay.
It's a flower in the show.
They're flowers and gears and books, and I have a chain, I have a heart with I have a key and then a heart with a like
You could just continue the
lock
chain
with a key going.
around the shoe and just have the chain on the inside of the shoe.
The chain came down here so I could have it come back up and like it's going in and out around.
Yeah. That way it's not something super important, but it still looks like you only did half the shoe.
Yeah, I might do that and then like some additional flowers. Because as I'm going also, as I'm drawing these on, I'm leaning a lot more toward just leaving a lot more of the charcoal sketchy kind of background as well, because I really do like it. And I'm thinking I don't need to fill it with like flowers overlapping flowers like I'd originally kind of been intending, sort of. At any rate.
So less busy than you had originally planned.
yeah, less busy and maybe a little bit more deliberate, I guess. So our next session is the
We only
Tuesday.
got 4 more, guys. We've got 4 more sections of this book, 8 chapters.
And we only have 2 more sessions in this year.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah,
Which
'cause,
means 2 more into the new year, and we will have.
it's crazy to
At
think
that
we've got
point, we'll have been doing this book club for 2 years by the time we finish the book.
What's going on there?
A lot of twos in that sentence.
So, yep, our next session is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So we'll be officially into Christmas season as far as I'm concerned. As far as my husband is concerned, we won't be yet because it won't be December yet. But as far as I'm concerned,
tree goes
by
up on Friday.
the time that the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade ends and Santa Claus goes, you're into the Christmas season.
As soon as Thanksgiving dinner is over, it used to be a tradition where after everybody was done with their turkey nap, we then put up the Christmas tree. That was the start of the Christmas season.
Nice.
I do have a question.
Hmm.
And it's kind of personal. Are you guys going to be putting up Mom's ornaments on the tree that I made her last year?
I don't think we've talked about that. I mean, if you want them, you're welcome to have them.
Okay.
All right. So next week we're reading chapters 40 and 41. Next session.
Yeah, next session. And we also are going to have something special for next session that I am not going to announce to the live stream. You two will know about it. Lisa already does.
Oh, mystery. I love mysteries.
But we'll have something special next time because it's a special day, or it's the day before a special day I discovered. So if anybody goes to find out what it's the day before, you might figure out what we have for next time. But in the meantime, everybody have a great night, and everybody